Minister, in the main, no one can doubt your bona fides around the work that you're doing here, and I certainly welcome the development of this bill. Just in the preamble of the bill, it obviously seeks to provide amending legislation to two previous pieces of health legislation, and in terms of the amendments to the Health Act 2007, it seems to provide for new enforcement powers for the Chief Inspector of Social Services in HICWA, and consequently will provide for greater safeguards for residents of residential care centres, and I think that is obviously to be welcomed. I think the additional collection and provision for the publication of data is very important from the point of view of residents and care plans. And also it says to widen the definition of those eligible to be considered as a family successor to family farms, productive businesses. I know that's something that has been highlighted in the Fair Deal scheme for quite some time as something. So in the main, I think that's all good work, Minister, and not to be faulted. I think it's interesting that the background of the bill suggests that it was the COVID-19 nursing homes panel who recommended these regulatory frameworks should be adjusted, that they needed modernising, and called for the additional enhancement of powers of the regulator. And certainly many nursing homes did quite badly, as we know, from COVID, and some are still struggling the losses that they suffered in that sector, particularly the private nursing homes. I also note that the bill will give increased enforcement powers to visit non-registered nursing homes by the HICWA inspector, and again, I think nobody could argue with any of that. But what I would say to you, Minister, that obviously others have spoken about the length of time maybe this legislation is coming, and legislation, as we all know, is not easily passed and to get through, but certainly in the care of our elder people and our disabled people, I don't think we should be delaying at all. So, as I say, I welcome this, but I would ask the question, Minister, does this legislation recognise the disparity between the private and the public sector in terms of the residential care setting? And Minister, you're no stranger to the issues of the private nursing home sector, and indeed in our own city of Waterford, you're well aware of two high-profile nursing homes that have closed in the past 2 years, simply because of where the costs are going in the business, and where the state that those operators would say that the state is not providing enough funding to cover their costs. And there is a very significant disparity between what a public nursing home can get paid in terms of capitation and what a private nursing home can get paid. And I'm not quite sure why that exists when the preponderance of beds are actually provided by the private sector. But it seems to me, Minister, that part of what government policy has essentially created is a rush to consolidation. So where the large providers are able to sit down and do arrangements with the department in terms of the monies that they can get, rather than the small guys who can't. And the other issues that we've had, and we've seen it before, is that if you're a small nursing home operator, it's unlikely that you can pay the remuneration that is offered in public nursing homes, or go you change your staff and then they're poached off to the HSE, which we saw happen throughout COVID, was a significant problem. So I think one of the things we have to recognise within all of this regulation, and regulation by itself is not always a good thing. We do need to have standards. We do need to have compliance, absolutely, with the standards. But I can tell you that the private nursing home sector, Minister, would also be calling for greater supports, not alone regulatory oversight, not alone, unannounced inspections. They'll put up with all of that. But what the other thing they're asking for is greater cover, greater support, greater understanding to the challenges that they face, and also the understanding that you have small nursing homes, and you know this, Minister, even from our own constituency, who are out in the rural areas. You know, they are providing a very, very beneficial service to a catchment area around them. And it's great that the HSE comes in and says, listen, you guys are not complying and we need you to maybe take on a few more people, or we need you to do X amount of capital works or whatever. And once that happens, everybody feels good. Oh, we've gone in there and we've told those guys to tidy up and get going. And then what we find is that they can't do it, or they choose not to do it because of the costs involved. Then we lose those beds. And now all of a sudden, where somebody was, and St. Bridget's in Carrick-on-Shure, case in point, when somebody was able to go and visit a relative very close close by. They're now no longer able to do that, and they're ended up with a round circuitous trip that could be 10, 20, and I know down in Kerry it's 30 and 40 miles, and maybe more, depending where a bed comes available. So, Minister, what I would say in the round, obviously, I think anybody would support the positive developments in this, but I do think we still haven't addressed the issue that is in the residential nursing home setting, and probably in the disability setting as well, which is, those who are providing a private service, I think there's a culture at times within the public system to label every private for-profit operation as being somehow malevolent, that is only profit and nothing else. And you and I both know private nursing homes where that could not be further from the truth. They have an excellent standard of care. They have nursing directors and nursing managers who go above and beyond the call of duty to make sure that their residents are properly looked after, and they don't skimp. But at the same time, as I say, they don't feel, and they are not getting the same amount of support from the state. That is a fact. That's not just them saying it. It is a fact, and it's a question of why that disparity exists and why we are not trying to address it. I haven't read all of the briefing documents, but I'm not sure that is in there, Minister. Maybe it is. So, and I think that's something we need to do for the future, because we cannot have a private sector providing 80% of the beds, where we're saying we're not going to support you, but we'll support the public sector up to the hilt for the 20%, and then we'll become surprised at times when we're losing private beds. But as I say, Minister, I will be supporting the legislation. I think there's good work in it, but I do think we have to do more, and I do think we have to recognise and maybe stop. I don't want to say vilifying the private sector, but I hear it in this House from time to time when private residential care is being talked about, and people are talking about, the monopoly and the private aspect of it, and it's all for profit. But if there's not a profit there, the business cannot operate. Therefore, the residents cannot be cared for that setting. And unless the state is going to step in, and we don't want the state to step in, because oftentimes it will cost us twice and 3 times as much. That's a fact of life. If it wasn't a fact of life, the state would have taken this sector over years ago. So there is a place for both parties. Yes, we need the regulation. Yes, we need the enforcement. We need all of that, but we also need to recognise that there is greater support needed for the private nursing home sector, and that's what I will be calling on.